First off is learn the market. Because in this industry, you can go meet somebody that's been in the business 3-4 years and start talking about their asset class in their market. They can't answer. Most firms are going to take you and just put you on the phones right away, thinking that's the way you're going to learn. People are going to ask you questions. You're not going to be able to answer them. So the other way to do it is take your first week or two, learn the market. Let's say it's multifamily in Beverly Hills. I want you to tell me what's on the market right now, how many properties, average price, what's the average days on market, what's the average list price, what's the average sales price compared to that list price, what's the average cap rate, all of it. After week one, and I sit down with you and ask you these questions you can't answer, I say, okay, we'll see you next week. Have this stuff down. Because if you're going to be cold calling and you have all this information down, now you can actually have a conversation.
There's a difference between working in real estate and building companies inside the industry. Most people enter this business focused on transactions, and some start thinking about systems, scale, and how to create something bigger than a single deal. Today's guest lives in that second category. Joe Killinger is an entrepreneur, investor, and founder who has scaled 3 real estate companies to more than $5 million in revenue within their first 18 months. Whoa, who does that? His work centers on building scalable businesses through systems, strategic marketing, and strong leadership. But Joe doesn't operate only companies. He also studies the industry. Through his YouTube platform, he interviews top real estate pros and breaks down the strategies behind successful businesses, helping agents and investors understand how modern marketing, content, and operational systems are reshaping the way that opportunities are created. So in this episode, we're talking about building companies inside real estate, why real estate brokerages, commercial brokerages, often fail to train their agents properly, and what the first 90 days should actually look like if you want to build a long-term career. Let's jump on in to the Icons of Real Estate podcast. Joe, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, Robert, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. Thank you for that wonderful intro. My mother would be proud.
Well, I think we should invite her next time. Let's go.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Listen, so I love what you're saying here. We talked just for a few moments before the show, and you were revealing, I was going to use the word heinous, but a crazy statistic that nearly 90% of agents who jump into commercial real estate flame out within a very short time. How does any industry survive with that kind of turnover, man?
Well, here's the problem is, the average age of commercial real estate agents, 55 to 62, somewhere in there. And wow. So I think we've got a savior, and that savior is AI, because younger generation are now finding it more interesting. And I do think there's no better time to get into commercial real estate than right now because of AI. Because if you're willing to put content out and market yourself and write a white paper about transactions you've been involved with, or if you're new, obviously you can't do that, but you can create content. And when you're posting that out there regularly, or you're writing blogs and articles about what's going on in the industry, if you focus on your market, your asset class and your market, well, when somebody, let's say you're doing multifamily in Beverly Hills, which I wouldn't suggest you do because there's not much inventory there. However, so that wasn't a great choice. But if you're wanting to do multifamily in Beverly Hills and you're writing all this content, creating content, writing articles and blogs about it, when somebody goes into AI, I'm interested in multifamily in Beverly Hills, that's a blank slate, right? Well, if you've been have articles that are out on the internet, all of a sudden AI is going to go find you as the authority figure in that marketplace. So there's a huge opportunity here that I think right now. I
want to dig into AI further in just a little bit, but before we go there, let's start before AI, because that was where you started. You didn't have AI, and yet you were still able to build 3 companies to a multiple 7-figure mark. What was the biggest thing? What contributed? What was the biggest element that contributed to you being able to do that type of growth repeatedly?
No money was probably the biggest thing. So the way it started was I was at a company.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting laid off by the guy that is now the CEO of my commercial real estate brokerage firm, George Pino. He laid me off. He got laid off a couple months later, and I was already over at another company that was a startup real estate auction firm. here in Los Angeles called the Sands Group. And we were just getting started, and George got laid off, and he called me and goes, "Hey, what jobs are out there? You've been out in the marketplace for a while, so I know that you'd know." And I said, "Well, I don't really know. I know they, call these other auction companies that are were our competition at that previous company. But if you want, you can come over and do this with me. We'll do everything 50-50, but keep in mind, it's commission only." And so and he decided to do it, and we just cold called. We'd show up in the morning at 7:30. We would cold call starting in New York because we were doing auctions. We were going after banks, big developers, anybody doing anything in California. We'd start in New York and work our way clear to Hawaii, and we'd wrap it up for the day. Then, since there was no internet at the time, Robert, we would have to write out letters or print them out, and then sign them, fold them, put them in an envelope, put a stamp on them, get them to the mailbox at night. That's with everybody we spoke to. And we did that for several months. And finally, there's one person that I was calling almost on a daily basis because she was part of a big firm. And I mean, I bothered her. I would leave her messages on weekends even because I knew she was never going to answer. Her assistant got so tired of hearing from me. She goes, "Joe, here's a direct line." She never answers it. "Just leave your voicemails there. I can't keep getting these." I'm like, "Okay, thank you." I thought they were kind of funny, but maybe she didn't think so because she was getting a lot of them. But finally, cut to a few months later, this lady calls me. She goes, "Okay, hotshot, we're going to give you a chance. We're going to give you, I think it was 60 properties to auction off." And then they become our biggest client. And we did 600-700 properties a year for this client. So it worked out well, but it was just the motivation of not having any money.
Yeah.
But that really, I come from a working farm in Nebraska. So work was always, you never need to be afraid of work. So we got that company rolling, and, that was my fear of, what's the next thing? Because I knew the auctions weren't going to last that long, because once the internet came and go, this is going to go online, I'll guarantee you. And sure enough, it did. So fortunately, we're over at a firm we launched with, it was called DBL Realtors. We launched their commercial division for them, and we took that off. And then they ended up selling that company. And we started the office I'm sitting in right now, Commercial Brokers International, 20 years ago. And we're growing that company. And now we are right now growing 2 more companies. So we had those first 3. Commercial Brokers International is one of them. We got 2 more that we're actually growing. It's a commercial real estate mortgage company. And we now have the fastest growing commercial real estate affiliate network across the U.S. right now, called the Commercial Real Estate Affiliate Network. And very proud to be part of that.
Wow, that is amazing. I look back at some of what you just talked about, and you started out with a lot of not only just persistence, but cold calling. And so as I speak to some agents or people in commercial real estate, or in most industries where sales is involved, cold calling was a big part of their toolkit. But now people say, well, I hear a lot that people say that cold calling doesn't work anymore. I mean, have humans changed? What's the difference between then and now with regard to using that specific skill?
In commercial real estate, cold calling for outbound is still the number one by far, then emails. But really where you want to get is, I tell all commercial real estate agents, actually, this is any kind of salesperson, right? You got to get out of this mindset out of just lead generation. That's all they talked about. That's when I didn't have a choice because we didn't have the internet.
Right.
As soon as I got the chance to embrace the internet, I was all over it. But, you want to think about building a business, not chasing leads. We have a high turnover in this industry because we're always chasing leads. If you take time to really go out and build a business and do, like I was talking about earlier, start doing content, start writing articles, start doing everything you can get involved in your community, get people to call you. That's what every business does. You want to get both inbound and outbound. The inbound, the leads close a lot higher, right? Closing rates a lot higher. So you want to get inbound. Think about building a business, not just chasing leads. But yes, cold calling is it's powerful.
Yeah. So when I asked you about what your motivator was, you said no money.
Yeah.
So how do you focus on building a business, i.e. creating content and looking to get inbound, when you don't have any cash flow or money coming in? Because that is something that blocks a lot of people that are starting out. Let's talk about that first 90 days.
Yeah.
How do you build that business in the first 90 days when you don't have cash flow coming in?
Well, mine was extreme focus. So I just set out every morning is I'm broke. I got to get to the other side of this. So how do I do it? So it's extreme focus. I structured my day. I knew exactly what I was going to do. The time, obviously, it was pliable, because something come up, you have to take a call, a big client calls. Okay, I got to stop cold calling right now. I'll move that to later. But it just gave me extreme focus, and I set my priorities. If something was going to take my time, there need to be a end result from that, giving my time away. And so I learned that when I was broke. And I tell you, when I started having a little bit of success, that really rings true because, these things, I see so many people on them every day that are just staring at it and they're scrolling and scrolling. And I'm like, it's just wasted time that you cannot get back. And if you're new in this industry or any industry, you don't have the time to give.
Yeah. Yeah. So with regard to gaining momentum from a financial perspective, if you're coaching a brand new agent, commercial real estate, what are the first 3 to 4 moves that you're telling them to make?
First off is learn the market, because in this industry, you can go meet somebody, and this kills me, Robert. You can go meet somebody that's been in the business 3-4 years and start talking about their asset class in their market. They can't answer. So they'll know some of it, but not enough of it. And, this is all relationship building, right? So you're going to find it a lot easier to get business if you understand your asset class, your marketplace a lot better. Matter of fact, most firms are going to take you and just put you on the phones right away, thinking that's the way you're going to learn. People are going to ask you questions. You're not going to be able to answer them. Go that route. Learn by fire, right? So the other way to do it is take your first week or two, learn the market. Let's say it's multifamily in Beverly Hills again. You're going to know every transaction that's happened over the last couple of years in Beverly Hills. And I want to know from you. So I'm going to, before anybody in our company gets on the phones, this is exactly what I tell them. I'm going to talk to you in 1 week. I want you to tell me what's on the market right now, how many properties, average price, what's the average days on market, what's the average list price, what's the average sales price compared to that list price, what's the average cap rate, GRM, all of it. After week 1, and I sit down with you and ask you these questions you can't answer, I say, okay, we'll see you next week. Have this stuff down. Because if you're going to be cold calling and you have all this information down, now you can actually have a conversation, because you're going to find that when you're doing cold calls, if you monitor and people thought I was nuts when I started doing this. I said, I want you to monitor the amount of time that you're on the phone with somebody. When somebody's new, it's a few seconds, right? It's not very long at all. But when they really get into it and they get going and building relationships, all of a sudden that starts expanding and you get down to 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. Next thing you know, you're having real conversations and the business starts coming in. So, the more that you can relate to the person on the other end of that phone, or in your content you're making, or targeting the people you're targeting, you got to understand where they're coming from. We as brokers tend to be in sales, so we want to talk a lot when we should be asking questions. We should be listening and then asking questions.
Yeah. Yeah. You just talked about content and questions. What type of content should I be really looking to put out when I first get started?
What your viewers want to see. Whoever you're trying to attract, if you're trying to do Beverly Hills multifamily, then I want to focus my content on Beverly Hills multifamily and what's going on there. Really focus. Once I did my first transaction, I'd write a white paper about it. Say, this is how I met this individual. This is the pain points they were having. These are the numbers they were looking for. This is the property I found for them. This is when we closed. We're looking for more properties, something like that. Get that out on the internet and the business. Yeah, obviously, it's going to take a while, but then you should be doing shorts. Shorts are still very powerful for YouTube or on your social media. Keep doing that. The more that you do, the more that people are going to reach out to you because it lowers that barrier of reach out. When I started, nobody wanted to call us back because they didn't know who the hell we were. If you're putting content out, they're now going and looking, who is this person? And they see that you're doing the business and the market that they want to be in. Now they're going to call you.
Yeah. So you just mentioned YouTube and shorts. Is that where you recommend people focus their attention, or do you have recommendations for other social media channels as well?
It depends on the person, because I know a guy that just focuses on TikTok and he gets business from that. Me, I don't have that kind of personality, but he pulls it off. He does very, very well with it. But mostly mine is LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. and Facebook. Those work very, very well. You'd be surprised. Everybody says, "Oh, Facebook is just a bunch of old people." Well, they're decision makers, so they're probably older. But the Facebook marketplace has driven a lot of younger generation back to Facebook, and so I've had some interesting conversations on Facebook from somebody who was younger.
Yeah. Wow. So you mentioned something a little bit earlier about content and your brand.
Yeah.
And when you talked about YouTube just now, you were saying, okay, what do people want? To tell them a little bit about multifamilies in Beverly Hills. How do you add your brand into that? How do you create your personality? How do you create that trust factor with your audience?
That again, it's going to be, everybody does a little bit differently.
Yeah.
It's got to be consistency is going to be the number one thing. Have your logo, have your color. I mean, you can go on to AI and create all this in seconds and have a good looking logo, good looking color. But then you want to bring your authentic self to everything that you're putting out. I see so many people in our industry using AI to generate the content, and they're just putting that out. That's not you're the best authentic you can be, right? So be that person and be consistent with it. Consistency is the key for this, and make sure that your brand value stays true throughout. And again, you can go on AI and create this very quickly. Just make sure it's exactly what you want everybody else to see.
Do you have a framework or some sort of structure that you follow as you're utilizing YouTube, as you're creating content there? What's the arc that you...
I did. So I can tell you on YouTube, I was doing podcast style, right? I was doing that for a while. We had big success. We had Chris Voss on, we had Cody Sanchez on. But then I realized, I started looking, it was over a weekend, I was looking at YouTube, and there's so many people doing these podcasts. And honestly, it's just a lot of people that are recycling the same, in commercial real estate I'm talking about. And that's what my focus was recycling the same people over and over and over again. And so I thought, this just, they're asking the same questions. And I thought, I want to do something different. So I pivoted away from doing the podcast style, which I say that, but in an hour, I'm going to be doing another one because I have a friend that's written a book that I think can really help our industry. But so I started focusing on education, how to be a better real estate agent, residential and commercial. And I'm we're in the process of building these companies right now. And I'm going to start doing more content because I find that, that's what the people want to see. When I put stuff out about the companies we're building, Icon Capital or Commercial Real Estate Affiliate Network or Commercial Brokers International, I talk about how we're building it. I see the views go up. So you want to make sure that when you're putting your content out or your marketing out, that you're going in, say you put a piece of content out, go in about 48 hours later and look at the analytics. Understand, let's say it's a blog. What was somebody clicked on it? What was the open rate, the click-through rate? What is all that? And it'll really tell you what your viewers want to see. And so this is something that building these companies that we're building right now, people are finding it interesting that we're building 3 companies that all work together because, we've got Commercial Brokers International, you got Icon Capital Mortgage. Obviously, the Icon can feed the commercial real estate agents and their clients the loans, and the Commercial Real Estate Affiliate Network allows us to do deals all around the country with these affiliates. And so it's a pretty interesting web that we've wove, and people are finding that to be interesting. So I'm going to be putting more content out about that because that's what the viewers are wanting to take a look at.
I love that. So you've given a lot of gold, a lot of gems so far. One of my mentors in my head is Richard Branson because he's got 400 and something companies that he operates. And you've got a few. So for people that are building not just a real estate business, but looking to increase their entrepreneurship capital, scale themselves, how do you manage those multiple companies?
You have to have the right team, right teams, it's got to be the right people in charge. It's funny you say Richard Branson because I'm getting ready to do a video about what we're doing with these companies, and he's who I talk about, because he started Virgin Group, I think it was a parent company, yep. And then it was Virgin Galactic, Virgin Airlines, Virgin the hotels, Virgin yep. Cola, which I don't even
Virgin
know.
Mobile, yep.
Yeah, Virgin Mobile, yeah, all of that. But they all fed to each other in some you flew the airlines, you got points to go to the hotel. You stay at the hotel, you get points to use the airline. Which, by the way, that airline, I fly to Texas a lot. I love flying Virgin, and then Alaska bought it, and Richard Branson was freaking out because they're going to kill our brand there, and they did.
Wow.
So, he's ideal. He's built all these companies, and for him, it's all about teams too. You got to have the right people.
I love it. Let's talk a little bit about where people can find you. I know we talked about the first 90 days, and you have a guide called Your First 90 Days in Commercial Real Estate. Where can people grab that?
Yeah, you bet. You can go to joekillinger.co. I wrote a couple booklets because I think it's very important. When you're getting started, you have to really have a framework of how to start. So I wrote a booklet called Your First 90 Days in Commercial Real Estate. You can go into joekillinger.co, go to learn, and you can find it there. It's all free. Everything on joekillinger.co is free. There's no charge for any of it. Also, if you're thinking about building your own brokerage, going from being a real estate agent to wanting to own your broker owner, I wrote what we went through when we launched our commercial real estate brokerage firm. There's a lot of mistakes in there we made that you probably don't want to make because you can learn from my mistakes. And so those two can really help. And, you can reach out to me via the website, or joe@joekillinger.co is my email. Available. Joe Killinger is on all my social media. I keep it simple. That's the whole way I do all this, is I keep it very, very simple. If it gets too complicated, I can't. Time is too valuable, and I just don't have the brain cells anymore.
Man, I love it. Well, Joe, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Listen, my friends, here's what this conversation reminds us. Real estate success isn't just about knowing the market. It's about understanding what's behind the business behind the business. And Joe talked about systems that matter. He talked about training that matters, and how agents can treat their careers like an entrepreneurial venture rather than just a series of transactions, because they're ultimately the ones who are looking to build something that is lasting. Whether you're starting out or thinking about scaling beyond your next deal, the opportunity in this industry is still enormous if you approach it with the right mindset and the right structure. My friends, thank you for tuning in to the Icons of Real Estate. Remember, don't just listen, rewind, replay, and apply, because it's your turn to be iconic. We'll see you on the next episode.